KXLY4 News presents In Their Shoes, brought to you by Avista.
They say there are two sides to every story, but when it comes to some issues, there are many more than just two. You've heard the phrase, Seattle is dying. But what about Spokane? The Spokane community is at odds, trying to figure out how to handle what seems to be a growing number of people living on our streets. I'm Aaron Luna. Over the next half hour, we're going to be digging into this issue from all sides.
I'm Robin Nance, along with Derek Dice. KXLY4 News is shining a light on this issue, asking you to walk in their shoes.
The homeless, the first responders, the charities who work every day to try to solve a seemingly unsolvable problem.
And sometimes understanding an issue just comes down to seeing things in a different way.
Whether they're homeless because of their own choices or something out of their control, you're likely to see their faces as you drive around. And many people we spoke with agree it's an issue, and it's about to be a major issue in the race for who will replace David Condon as Spokane's next mayor. The first step is simply understanding the issue. Who is homeless in our city and why?
1,309. That's the number of people without a home in Spokane, according to the Point in Time study. So often we see homeless people in our community, perhaps under a bridge or on the sidewalk. But we never know what their story is, where they go at night, or how they got to where they are today. The Point in Time study helps answer those questions. 1,309 homeless people in Spokane were interviewed. This is the second year in a row Spokane has seen a decrease in chronically homeless people, and more families have found a place to live. So have veterans, 27% since 2017. The city says there are more resources available for veterans than there are that need them. However, the bad news, some categories increased in numbers, including minors and young adults. Volunteers also asked all 1,309 homeless people why they don't have a home. Family conflict was the number one answer. What came next? Lack of income and the loss of job. Other reasons include mental health, domestic violence, and some said they don't know. Each one of these answers is to help city leaders create a strategy to lower the numbers across the board, in hopes that next year's survey won't show a homeless population of 1,309.
There are people in our community who are homeless tonight and have been homeless for years. How does it happen and why?
We spoke with one man who says he can't escape his past, and that's kept him on the streets for 10 years. This is Joseph Sampson, who I went to school with at one point. He's used to calling the streets home. Joseph is one of nearly 250 people who were chronically homeless in 2018. About 20% of all homeless people in Spokane last year were considered chronically homeless. Tonight, he tells us what it's like to spend so much of your life without a place to call your own.
For a long portion of his life, homelessness has been all Joseph Sampson knows.
It's been about 10 years off and on, more homeless than anything.
With frigid temperatures and more snow on the way, a friend is giving Joseph a temporary place to sleep.
When the weather got kind of like this, started getting colder and stuff, I got a message from her on Facebook, kind of bawling me out for not coming and knocking at the door and asking to stay at her place.
But when the temperatures climb, Joseph will be back on the street looking for a place to stay each night. Joseph likes to hang out at places with Wi-Fi since that is his only form of communication. Today, it's My Fresh Basket, where he told me his story.
When it comes down to finding like a place to live, my criminal background follows me around a lot.
He says the biggest charge there, a felony drug conviction in 2005.
It's just something, that keeps following me to this day, and I kind of have to deal with.
He says, like many others, it stops him from being able to find stable housing. So they're forced to live on the streets, looking for work. But Joseph says even looking for work is hard when your main goal each day is survive.
From the moment that you wake up, your sole purpose is to survive the day. And sometimes you are so caught up in the things that you have to do to survive, like go into certain places at certain times to eat and stuff like that, that it's kind of hard to find the time to go out and progress in your life.
And not everyone does survive.
It's hard to lose anybody, but to homelessness, it's even harder, you know.
But Joseph says until he can find a place to live with his criminal record, he'll continue to be on the streets, and so will others. In the meantime, he says the city is on the right track to helping the homeless, but more needs to be done.
More shelter space is definitely needed. A storage type facility is definitely needed for people out here. And these warming centers.
Joseph told us he wants to see compassion from the community for the homeless. And even if you categorize all homeless people as drug addicts or criminals, addicts and criminals are still humans.
While most of us were making our morning coffee, there were people bringing breakfast and blankets to homeless camps and shelters across Spokane. Just like you have your morning routine, this is theirs, and no one pays them to do it. They are part of our community conversation too. We hope it opens your eyes to different opinions and solutions to homelessness. In their view, the people on the streets are friends who need and deserve help.
Socks?
Is there a sweater left?
Now that it's so cold, everybody's coming in, the homeless population, the people that slept in their cars before, the people that were out in different places, they're all coming into the warming center, so our numbers are huge. We're feeding 300 people a night instead of 100 or 150.
Thank you.
We see these guys every day, they're our friends.
If I need blankets or boots or something, she'll bring them to me. So
we know where they are and we know how to find them. So we hunt them down and make sure they have everything they need. We start here and then we go, there's some camps for people who won't come here. We bring them water, we bring them soup. They can warm the soup up on their fire.
You want some sandwiches?
Growing up, my dad was one of these people, and both my parents struggled with addiction issues, and I know that, the simplest little changes in the way my life could have gone could have ended me up here. Keeping them warm and fed is what we can do as community members. These are 12s too.
12s?
Yeah.
They're cold, they're hungry.
These ones are way heavy duty.
They're tired. We need to help them.
cool, thank you.
Yeah. It's not just their problem, this is our problem, and we need to figure out solutions for these guys to have safe places to live, and it will solve problems for everybody, business owners in the city, and if we could just get them places to live or stay.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And as a community, this is where we start to change the world, is we start at home.
It's not just single men and women living on the streets. Sometimes it's entire families. Listen to one mother talk about her struggle toward a new life, one that includes a roof over her children's heads.
He tried to strangle me to death while he raped me. With the kids in the room next door.
Patty Harris says she was trapped in an abusive relationship for 8 years. And she says when she was finally able to free herself and her kids from her abuser, she ended up on a path to drug addiction and homelessness. But she's taken her life back at Transitions, a nonprofit dedicated to ending homelessness for women in Spokane. At least 90% of the mothers staying here say they've been in violent relationships, and leaving meant becoming homeless.
Laughter filling a home that's already filled with family photos, a chore board, and food in the fridge. For so long, this has been Patty Harris's dream, one she never thought she'd actually realize.
I've always dreamed, of being in a better situation in our own place, but in the back of my mind, I knew doing what I was doing, I'd never get there.
Because for so long, Patty says she was trapped.
It started with, being in a domestic violent relationship for almost 8 years. When he went to jail, I had moved from town to get away from the situation. So that didn't quite work out in my favor.
One day there was a knock on her front door, one she says she never should have answered. It was her abuser. He'd found her and the kids.
He tried to strangle me to death while he raped me. With the kids in the room next door.
Patty and the boys escaped. They were free until she was trapped yet again by another abusive relationship, drug addiction, and selling drugs to keep her family afloat.
In my mind, I was doing the right thing for my kids. Saying, I couldn't find a job, but really I don't think I was really looking for one because I thought I was taking the easy route, and it's not.
They were moving from couch to couch, hotel to hotel, for 4 years.
It's terrifying not knowing if your kids are going to sleep in a bed the next night or have a roof over their head or somewhere to cook them a meal, it's hard. It definitely can destroy your soul a little bit. We were literally in a tent in a field, and after the second night of doing that, I think I just woke up one morning and I was like, I can't do this to my kids anymore.
That's when a former coworker drove her and the boys here to Spokane, where Patty knew she'd find the help she so desperately wanted and needed to free her family at the Union Gospel Mission, at Catholic Charities, and eventually here at Transitions.
And the things that I feel like I've exposed my kids to that, no child should ever be exposed to, that's a terrible feeling. I don't think I can ever get over that guilt.
But with the help of her boys and the women at Transitions, she's been working through that guilt at the nonprofit's transitional housing.
I've done more for myself in the last year and a half being at Transitions than I feel like I've ever done for myself, ever, really.
Now, she's free from addiction, from abuse, and the guilt she felt trapped in for so long. She's taken her life back, and she finally feels free, right alongside her boys.
They're my best friends, and I owe them the world, and I'm so thankful that they still believe in me.
Someone's not thinking about their health if they don't know where they're going to sleep that night or they don't know where they're going to get their meal. Once they have those covered, then they can start thinking about their chronic condition.
It's nearly impossible to lead a healthy life living on the streets. Now, imagine if you had a serious illness and no place to recover. We want to tell you about an important partnership between Sacred Heart and Catholic Charities that allows the homeless to heal after getting treatment instead of being turned out onto the streets again. Homeless people often wind up in emergency rooms for the health care they need. Sacred Heart says about 5% of all ER visits at their hospital are homeless people. That's part of the picture.
The other part of that is what happens after the initial ER visit. How do they heal and recover when they don't have money to stay in the hospital?
Many of us, myself included, might have a bit of trepidation sparking up a conversation with someone who's homeless.
I mean, I slept underneath that bridge right there for a couple of days, but with one eye open.
But like all of us, they have their stories.
It ain't cold out there in the wintertime. It's pretty cold.
Sometimes you just have to ask.
Everybody's like kind of prejudiced against them, which makes it even harder, and they just keep going down farther and farther.
These two men, Randy Thomas and Bobby Flowers, are currently on an upward swing after a downward fall.
I was in the hospital for like a week from congestive heart failure, and I lost my place. I couldn't pay rent.
Bobby was already homeless and had to have surgery for glass in his foot. He also has diabetes, a hard thing to have when you don't know when or where your next meal might come from.
I needed a place safe and a place to stay.
So now put yourself in their shoes. You're down on your luck, your health is questionable, you've just had surgery, you need to recover, but you don't have a home, much less a bed, you don't have a shower, consistent meals. Your options, stay at the hospital as long as possible, that's the expensive option and you probably don't have money, or head back out on the streets.
Wound care, even if someone had an acute condition and they had a laceration and then they need to care for that wound, if you're on the streets and it's constantly dirty, there's a lot more chance for it to get infected. At least with this, you can heal, actually heal from something like that, and you don't come back to the hospital for something much worse.
This she's talking about, the Transitional Respite Program partnership with Catholic Charities and the hospital. Patients are taken here to the House of Charity and provided all their basic needs to heal. Without it,
probably wouldn't have made my doctor's appointments and eventually been back in the hospital if not even died from it.
It's far from cushy, but it's something. The program is as much about healing as it is about getting lined up with resources.
Helped me out with, got my ID back, and housing.
But that's only part of it. The head of the House of Charity says there's something even more important, but it's subtle. They build a community.
Somebody to listen to, somebody to talk to, and that's where you can really get somebody engaged in case management that may never have before.
As Randy and Bobby wind down their days in the respite program, a month so far for Randy, more for Bobby.
Then I just found out today that my Section 8 was approved, and it was like, that was a blessing.
They say they too see the homeless situation as a tough one to crack. But one thing they know, you can't approach it painting with a broad brush. You can't approach it without knowing their stories.
Bad apples on both sides, homeless and not homeless, but for the most part, we're all the same. Mostly we just need a chance.
Where are you staying tonight? This is it?
It's probably not a question you have to ask yourself. Where are you staying tonight? But for many in our community, finding a place is a battle every day. But it's not a battle they fight alone. The city's firefighters do so much more than just put out flames. They see the homeless on street corners, panhandling, under bridges, sleeping on concrete sidewalks. Now see them through the eyes of a first responder who's seen it all.
It all starts with a simple greeting and a question.
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing? Hey guys, anybody home? Hi, how are you?
That's what we noticed when we spent one afternoon with Spokane Fire Chief Brian Schaefer to talk about the city's homeless community. Little did we know, where we'd find the homeless was as open-ended as that question. We started the trip by visiting one of Spokane's only shelters open during the day.
Amount of square footage in here, just honestly how tight it is.
People on the ground sleeping body to body.
We're essentially using spaces that were never designed to serve as temporary housing.
Schaefer says the city has to modify housing just to meet the need of Spokane.
A lot of us are blessed to have a home, a place to put stuff, a garage. A lot of the people that we're dealing with here, we're trying to bring all that with them.
We get in the car again, this time driving by Fish Lake Trail, finding a woman living in her car. Again, Chief Schaefer asks a question.
You just by yourself?
No. Got my son and 2 dogs.
We learn this woman isn't in a shelter for a reason that sounds familiar.
Is there anything we can do for you? Have you checked with any of the 24-hour shelters?
They're all full.
They are? That's kind of what we're hearing.
Yeah, we get run off from here, we move around.
Again, we're in the car.
The trail is full of urban campers.
And we find more homeless camps.
We are standing in the city of Spokane, but in an unincorporated area in Spokane, just right off of Fish Lake Trail. They live like you and I do. I mean, their path is clearly shoveled. They have a restroom area. They have their own capability for staying warm and for cooking.
Make no mistake, this living environment is not safe for anyone.
There is no address on this encampment. This is just, essentially a lat long, and our firefighters have to go through the trails, dodge the areas of concealment to try to locate and take care of these people.
We hop in the Spokane Fire car one more time. Here, we find a homeless man sleeping under a bridge.
Where are you staying tonight? This is it?
This is where we learn that same car we've been jumping in this whole trip is a homeless resource all on its own.
What about a bus pass? Would it help you if you had a couple bus passes to get you out of here? All of our fire companies in the system, myself included, any fire department car always carries $100 cash and bus passes.
While each one of these situations start with a simple greeting, they all end with a goodbye.
Take care.
Walking away, wondering what will happen next.
What we've learned in the course of our reporting, as you can see, is that Spokane has a lot of compassionate people that really want to help those on the street. Catholic Charities has led the way with transitional housing and shelter. According to the House of Charity, in 2018, they had 183 men and 58 women in the program. 29 of them were moved into permanent housing. The program has run for several years and is actually being used as a model for other cities like Olympia. Catholic Charities estimates they have saved the hospital millions through this program. Our conversation on homelessness will be right back after this. Welcome back. The Union Gospel Mission has been helping the homeless get back on their feet for decades. And one young man told us he's finally ready to get off the streets and away from drugs for good.
I kind of had like holes and bruises on my face.
25-year-old Tyler Burnett is describing what he calls the lowest moment of his life.
I was using meth and I was using heroin, but the meth really got out of control for me. It does weird things to people where they start to pick at their face.
A decade of drug abuse landed him in the hospital again, this time battling another life-threatening condition caused by that constant picking, sepsis.
I just woke up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's ruining my life and I don't have much of a life.
For the 4 years that his addictions were at their worst, Tyler says things like food and shelter didn't matter.
You know those recycling bins, like the big ones where you put like cardboard and stuff? I've slept in those.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired, Tyler reached out to his grandparents for help. They brought him here to the Union Gospel Mission.
I've been at rock bottom for so long, I'm ready to start climbing back up that ladder.
It was in this very room just a few months back that Tyler met with his grandpa and Dean Whistler, a social services manager with the mission, to come up with a plan.
I case managed him, discovered what he was dealing with, and we put him into the Employment Ready program.
Part of the UGM program is figuring out the why of a person's homelessness.
I tell them, you're going to have heart surgery. They're going to pull your heart out and help get rid of that stuff that caused you to drink and drug.
For Tyler, it will involve revisiting his childhood. At 3, his mom chose her abusive boyfriend over him and his sister and put them up for adoption.
I think it was just so traumatic, and I was so young that it just stuck with me. I never really got over it.
In his teens, he learned his father had been killed as he was trying to track him down.
It kind of leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
To be honest, his first few weeks here and knowing the horrific story and things that he's dealt with, all the years of homelessness and his youth, I'm like, oh boy.
So far, Tyler has defied the odds, proving himself to be a dedicated hard worker. He's risen into a supervisor position in the cleaning department at the mission and is on track to be enrolled in the long-term recovery program in April.
I'm feeling confident. I'm just ready to get over this chapter of my life so I can get on to actually living my life and not being stuck in that cycle.
Day in and day out, Spokane police answer calls for and about homeless people in the city.
Police are on the front lines of this issue, and they took our KXLY4 news crew out in the field to see things through their eyes.
Let's take a drive around Spokane with Senior Officer Ben Mapplethorpe. He knows about homelessness in the city. He's been a neighborhood resource officer for several years now.
Every call is different. As the same as they may seem, everything's different.
As an officer downtown, he's handled homeless people from warming shelters to the streets.
Honestly, they're wherever they want to be. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily, other than like right now with it being so cold, anywhere they can go to try to stay warm.
We drove for about 30 minutes before Officer Mapplethorpe gets dispatched for a homeless person outside a shelter on Cannon.
Hello, ma'am. Spokane Police, what's going on?
How does a police officer handle a homeless call? It all starts with simply having a conversation.
What is causing the issue today? Did the mental health cause the drug use, or did the drug use cause the mental health issues? I mean, those are the things we have to try to address.
And that's what he did with this woman sitting on the street.
A woman threatened to kill me.
Okay. Sorry to hear that.
Conversations like that happen more often than not, according to Spokane police.
Say again?
What? She hasn't been on the meds for a while. She is 5150 California. I need my
husband
to act like a man.
I see.
Doesn't come here and tell me what to do. Go to the hospital.
Sonia.
I don't need to go to the
Sonia.
hospital. I need a place to stay.
Hey, Sonia.
Where do you want me to wait?
He says responding requires patience, even when they're not.
Is your name?
No money, no nothing.
Is your name Sonia? Can I call you Sonia?
Yes, would you please talk to him? Am I supposed to just wander the streets with no ID?
Well, this is what we have to figure out.
He says part of being an officer is helping connect people to services they need.
With her sitting down like that, I felt a little more comfortable getting closer to her and then talking to her and figuring out what the issue was.
Officer Mapplethorpe and this woman talk for about 15 minutes before she grabs a couple things and leaves.
Nothing ever really gets accomplished sometimes with these calls. Then they just storm off.
But it's part of the job, diffusing situations and trying to connect people with help through a conversation.
My goal, obviously, is to go home safely at night, just like my goal is to make sure everybody else goes home safely at night.
We've likely all seen it, a homeless man or woman on the side of the road with their dog or cat. You might be curious how they take care of them and wonder why they have them in the first place.
Those we've spoken to say, in some cases, those pets are motivators for people to finally get off the streets.
They're only 10 weeks old.
It's all new sounds and smells for these balls of energy.
who've been waiting all morning with their owners and siblings for their very first checkup.
Want salt and pepper? Come on, sweetie.
Little do they know,
We can get their first distemper on board.
it's been a long road getting here.
They've been doing really good. They've been eating.
See, Tracy and Lori and their pets were homeless up until just before last Christmas.
Being a woman, it had its challenging moments.
I did live it, and I know how hard it is.
They floated around on the streets at the STA Plaza where they actually met, then into motel rooms, and then finally into their own rental. It took a lot of work, and it's still a precarious situation.
I had to bear, through the winter months and everything, and it was the first time for me, and I just never want to go back that avenue if I can help it.
One of their main motivators in picking up the pieces of their life, you guessed it, these guys.
You want to take care of yourself, but you want to take care of them mostly because they're out there with you.
It's a story of dedication that veterinarians and nurses at WSU who put on this free clinic for both people and pets in need see all the time. The why is crystal clear.
It's the one thing that's very stable for them, and it's their sometimes only friend and only kind of family. And honestly, I think they're sometimes more interested in the care for their pets than they are for their own care.
And that's where this clinic comes into play. It combines it all when it comes to the overall public health picture. Bring in your pets, and you'll also get the care you need, vaccinations and such. It's a teaching moment, and a model that the dean of the veterinary school says is proving successful.
Trying to keep that unit intact and that pet healthy is critical to the health of that human.
A consideration that should be kept in mind when approaching the homeless problem, opening up access.
A lot of shelters won't let you come in with a pet. If you need your own medical care, what happens to your animal or your pet when you go to the doctor?
Truly a man's best friend scenario. There's benefits.
It's unconditional love, there's support, it helps your mental health. There's a lot of evidence actually that it helps your physical health, lowers your blood pressure, reduces stress.
So as the story of Peanut, Maple Bar, Ambrosia, and Salt and Pepper, Lori, and of course Tracy continues to unfold,
We keep each other going. They're there for you. If you love them, they'll love you back.
there's just one more piece of the puzzle to think about.
As you can see, so many sides, so many issues, from families with children to veterans without a permanent place to live in Spokane.
We'll report on this issue as long as it matters to you. You can find all of our stories on KXLY.com.
And as the races for Spokane Mayor and Spokane City Council positions heat up, we know this will be a talking point for candidates. At KXLY, we're committed to getting beyond the talking points and getting instead to the personal stories behind the data, so that wherever you stand on this issue, you can at least see other perspectives by walking in their shoes. Thanks for watching. With Derek Dice and Robin Nance, along with our team of KXLY reporters, I'm Aaron Luna.
In Their Shoes, a KXLY4 News presentation was brought to you by Avista.